Okay, yeah. So welcome to this quickie in which I will discuss Helinon.io. So first of all, I thought that it was a 25-minute session, so I'm going to skip most of my slides so that we can have a demo and see what's going on. So the first thing is that I'm going to skip through that. I'm going to skip through that. So what is Helidon.io? So Helidon.io, simply put, is a set of Java libraries for developing microservices. It's a project that we have started last year, and it's obviously an open source project. So everything is on GitHub. It's Apache v2. And if you just have to remember one URL, pick Helidon.io, the website. From there, you have access to everything, including very well, nicely designed user guide. So this is a view on how we see the Java microservices frameworks market. My slides are auto-playing, which is quite nice. So, sorry for that. Well, yeah, let's do it this way. So this is how we see the market. So basically, we have micro frameworks. We have then micro-profile-based frameworks, which provide more capability. And then we have full-stack frameworks, such as Spring Boot, Jakarta, Drop Wizard sits between the two. Helidon is quite unique in the sense that it fits within the micro-frameworks space. So it's very lightweight. It doesn't necessarily provide all the capability that you would find above. But it provides really all the basics you need to write microservices. And then, based on that, we also have Helidon MP, which is basically our microprofile implementation that you can use to write microservices using the microprofile different API. So if we look at this, basically Helidon provides two programming models. A very lightweight programming model for Helidon SE. It's very functional, it's reactive, it's transparent, so there's no hidden magic, there's no containers, there's no dependency injection, and so on. So basically what you write is what you will get. And then we have Helidon MP, which provides basically the ability to write microservices if you are coming from the enterprise world. Basically, you have the ability to use JAX-RS, JSONB, CDI, and so on. So basically, all the API that you are been using if you are Java EE or Jakarta EE developers. Now, from an architecture standpoint, this is basically how Helidon looks like. So we have Helidon SE, that's really the basis, and we have three core components. We have a web server that is technically based on NetEase, so we have a high-performance GP stacks. We have a config component, and we have a security component. And based on that, we have Helidon MP. So whenever we have capability that basically fit at the two layer, we are not trying to invent the wheel. So basically, Helidon MP is rely as much as we can on Helidon SE. And something that is important is that we are also trying to have some capability of Helidon MP at the Helidon SE layers. So for example, at the Helidon SE layer, you have the ability to use Jersey, which is really something that is part of MP. But still, we think that it makes sense from time to time to basically expose those capabilities at the two layers. So, sorry for that. So the three core components of Helidon, so the reactive web server, which is based on NetEase, it provides open tracing, metrics capability, health checks. So typically the thing that you would like to have when it comes to microservices. And as I mentioned, we also have the ability to use some of the capability that are coming from the above MP stacks, such as JAX-RS and JSONB. It also provides static web serving capability. Having said that, it's not a full-blown web server. But nevertheless, if you need to do some basic web serving capability, that's something that you can do using Helidon SE. We then have this config component that basically gives you a configuration API. So it provides a tree-based model with different data sources, such as a URL, such as a Git endpoints, such as a variable, a file, a local file on the class path, environment variable, and so on and so on. From an API standpoint, it doesn't really matter because all of that is basically abstracted away. So you can also use different type of configuration formats, such as HOCON, YAML, JSON, and so on and so on. All of that is handled by the API. And last but not least, we have the security component that you can use to secure your endpoint. So what I suggest is that we quickly, well, we just look at code. It's maybe a better way to do things. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a simple Helidon SC application using an archetype that we do provide. Something that we do also with Helidon is that basically, so it has been generated, so let's have a look. So obviously we're talking about microservices. So that means that we're also making sure that you can easily basically deploy those microservices within the cloud. So we are generating the Docker and the Kubernetes artifact out of the box. So let's see, Maven. So let's build that. So this is a simple Hello World endpoint. Let's see what's wrong. Oh, I know what's going on. I just did a session before. And I still have a bunch of things from my previous session. So fn stop. Oops. So the thing that you can notice is that whenever we build our microservices, obviously we're testing it. So let's build it again, Maven package. My port was already used by some things from my previous session. And now obviously the tests are pacing. So if we look at what has been generated, we have this quick start SC, which is a 11 kilobyte microservices. So Java dosh jar quick start. And oops, sorry. And it started, and this is the endpoint. So we can invoke that endpoint. So great, great JNation. We can update using a put the greetings. So sorry. So hola JNation and so on. Well, you get the idea. This is a pretty basic endpoint. But what is interesting is that, oops, sorry, let's quickly look at the code so that you will have some flavor on how an Helidon SC application looks like. And I'm in the wrong directory, sorry for that. So you see that we have a Docker file, we have, well, you couldn't see it, but we also have a Kubernetes. So this is the main classes. So everything starts here. So start web server, so that's basically where we start our endpoint. So if we look at that method, while we are configuring the log manager, we are creating a config object. By default, it's convention over configuration, so it will pick up a file in the class path, an application.yaml. So if we look in the class path, we should have, yes, we have this application.yaml. So you see, in this case, it's obviously YAML. So we have basically an app configuration. So that's the greeting and the web server configuration. So that's one thing, we're creating that. And then based on that, we are creating a server configuration. So server configuration create, and we are just using the configuration object. So, and more specifically, the server configuration from that object to configure our endpoint. So basically, that means that we are using the IP address, this IP address and this port. So next, so we are creating the web server using that information. So nothing is very fancy here, but we have this creating routings method. So, but that's basically where we are defining all the routing for our web service endpoints. So if you look, first, we're creating a metrics object. So we're adding metrics capability to our endpoint. We are creating the actual services, so the great services. And finally, we're also adding some health support. So let's have a look quickly at the great service. So basically, what we are doing here, we are creating our REST endpoint. And basically, you see here that we have this update method that define all the routes that our endpoints will expose. So the first one is /, So in this case, we're going to use this default message handler. So if we look at that one, basically, it will just answer with a world. So it's a hello world. We then have this message handler. Sorry, where is it? This message handler that is using one of the parameters that is passed in the request. So that's what we have when we do this, for example. So JNation, that's one of the path parameters that we are using. And finally, you see that those two were responding to the HTTP GET method, but this one is responding to the put method. So that's the one that we are using when we need to update the grading. And whenever we have a put HTTP verb on greetings, basically we're invoking this handler, so update greetings. And you see that basically this one is using JSON to basically respond back, to parse the content that is passed to my put. So that's basically, in a nutshell, my endpoint. If we look next, so we have defined the services itself. We are defining health support. That is being done here. And you see that I don't specify, I'm just using the standard health check. So if we look at that health check, what it provides out of the box. So this one is basically testing, if it's running on Graal VM, it will just provide a heap memory check. And given that in this case we're not running on top of Graal, it will provide a deadlock, a disk space, and a heap memory check. And again, it's convention over configuration. So I've created all those objects, and then it's just a matter of basically building the routing. So again, we are using a builder-based pattern. So you see here, we are registering JSON support. We are registering the health support metrics. And finally, obviously, our REST endpoint, so the grid services, and we build that. So if we run that again, set Java minus jar, sorry, it's in target. Quick start SC, so it runs. So you already saw that, but what we also have is, for example, metrics. So we have the metrics that are provided out of the box by the frameworks. That, and obviously we also have the health. It's health. We have a health endpoint. This time it's a health endpoint that we can JQ. So you see that we have the heap memory, we have the disk space, and we have the deadlock. So basically the one that are provided by default by the platform. And I have the ability to define new health checks or new metrics. So what we can also do, well, you see, maybe you have noticed that we have a Docker file, so we can deploy we can build our endpoints into a Docker container. So lid.sc Docker run rem -p, the ports, it's 8080, no, it's 8888. lid.sc, sc latest, I think. No, it's not lid.sc. Yep, sorry, thank you. I'm very good at doing typo. And now it runs within my Docker containers. So if I try to hit the same URL again, it's connection refused. Why? Because I'm exposing on 8080. So 8080. And, well, to prove that it runs within Docker, well, you see that I have way less memory given that I'm running in the Docker container. And obviously, if I kill my Docker containers, oops, sorry, it doesn't answer. So that's in a nutshell a very short overview of very short overview of Helidon. I will just conclude by mentioning that Helidon also supports a microprofile programming model. So if you are more comfortable with that, have a look at that. Right now, the support in terms of API for microprofile is between 1.2 and 2.2. So our goal is to support microprofile 2.2 as soon as we can, but we are not there yet. And finally, I will quickly mention that we also support Graal VM. So out of the box, you can build an Elidon SE application into a native executable that will be running within a Docker container. And that's something that we do to basically reduce the startup time of our microservices, our endpoint, and reduce the footprint. So that's where we are. So we're working on supporting microprofile 2.2. There's a typo. It's HTTP2 support. We have initial support for gRPC. So with that, I'm really sorry for I just want to give you, well, this URL. Oops, sorry. So if you want to give it a try, it's very easy to use. We have very nicely designed user guide. Give it a try. You will see that it's, well, it's very easy and straightforward to write microservices using Elidon. And with that, I think that my time is already running. Oh, well. 5 minutes. So what can I show you in 5 minutes? We can have a look very quickly at Elidon MP then. Archetype. So I'm going to use the microprofile archetype. So generate active Elidon MP artifact. Oops, I was not in the right directory. Maven package. Well, let's look at the code. So this is basically the same endpoint, but this time using the microprofile programming model. And it's still importing. So this is, oops, sorry, this is basically a pure JAX-RS application. So if we look at our resource, so you see this is our class resources. It's used the @path annotation. So this is slash. It will be exposed at /greet. It has the scope request. We are using injection. Produce media type. Again, this is pure JAX-RS code, so we haven't invented anything regarding that. The idea of Elidon MP is basically to give you the ability to continue using the API that you have been using with Java EE for many years. And yeah, I think it's a bit chaotic, but I had many issues with this. So, again, to conclude, I will just the Docker. This is the website that I was talking about. So give it a try. And if you look here, basically, we have the basic guide that will help you to get started. And well, we are spending a lot of time on making sure that we have nice documentation for Elidon. That's really one of the first things that we have done. So you can use Elidon. Obviously, you saw that we are generating the Docker file, but we're also generating the Kubernetes application deployment file to deploy directly your microservices endpoint into a Kubernetes cluster. So with that, I will take very quickly questions if there are any questions. Yes? So the question is it production ready?
Yeah.
Depends what you mean by production ready. If we look at the roadmap, we had the 1.0 that was released some times ago. And basically, we wanted to have a 1.0 well, we wanted to make all the breaking change before that 1.0. So we don't expect to have a lot of change regarding, the core API themselves. But for example, if you are talking about gRPC support, right now the gRPC support is, well, it's not yet finalized. HTTP support is not yet finalized. So there are things that are not ready yet within Elidon. So you can use it in production. But look at which API you are using. I mean, if you are leveraging JAX-RS, JSON-B, JSON-P, we are pretty confident. But if you are using the new stuff that we have added recently, then, well, it might be a little bit tricky to use that into production.
OK, thanks.
Any more questions? OK. Thank you. And I apologize for, it was a bit chaotic, but, the timing was not really right. I was told that it was 25, then it was 15, and then it was 25 again. So I'm really sorry for that. So thanks again.